So we are back at the Flying Buffalo booth here, and we have an actual illustrious guest here that we're going to be interviewing. This is Ken St. Andre. He is the designer of Tunnels and Trolls, the second role-playing game really ever invented. Is that a fair statement to say?
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Okay.
Back in,
well, I'll let you.
back in 1975. When Dungeons and Dragons was new, I'm sure there were a lot of people that did not understand the game.
Right.
I certainly didn't. One night I saw it at a friend's house for a gaming night I went to. It was Rick's house, actually. And they were all playing Risk, and I was too late to be in that game. So I saw the first edition boxed Dungeons and Dragons. And I said, well, I've been hearing about this game for months. I've got to look at it and see what it's like. So I sat down and I started reading the original Dungeons and Dragons rules. And I was totally confused by it all. Totally. I mean, what are they talking about moving in inches? What is this, D12s, D8s, D20s?
Right.
I'd never seen any of that. But I sort of got the idea of what they were doing.
The overall concept.
I got the overall concept. I said to myself, what a great idea. What a lousy execution. I will go make a game that I and my friends can play, and we'll use D6s. Because everybody can get six-sided dice.
Right.
So, after a couple of hours of looking at their rules, I tossed it aside and I went home and I checked out books from the library on monsters and weapons. And I sat down and I said, now, how does that game go? Well, first we design a character. And he has attributes and they're logical. So yeah, strength is logical, constitution is logical, intelligence is logical. Wisdom? What the hell is wisdom? If you had any wisdom, why would you go in a hole in the ground where monsters could kill you?
Good point. Very good point.
Right? We'll throw out wisdom. We'll put in luck. Luck is very important. You know, luck keeps you alive when nothing else will.
Right.
Hit points. What do you need hit points for? If you got a constitution attribute, isn't that your hit points?
Good point, yeah.
Yeah, so I said constitution will be hit points. I said spells. I didn't understand the whole spell system, but obviously there was magic in it. I said there will be spells. They will do things, and we'll make them up. So
the individual characters, players will make them up.
No, the players won't make them up. I would make them up.
You'll make them up later. Okay.
And then we would give, once players reach a certain level, say 7th level, they could make up their own.
Excellent, okay.
All right. And so for a couple of days I wrote frantically on this, and I had about 8 pages of rules when I was done. And I called my friends over and I said, come play this new game. They loved it. Okay? They loved it, and they started borrowing my rules and photocopying them so that they could play with their friends and run the game.
That's always a good sign, it's spreading at that point.
And my rules quickly got beaten all to pieces. So I said, this has got to stop. We'll take out, you guys photocopy each other's rules now if you want to. I will make a game where everybody can have a copy of the rules, and we'll put in some of the ideas that we've come up with our first primitive playtesting there, the first couple of games we played. Like my friend Bear Peters and Greg Brown came over and said, but Ken, why do we have to be humans? And I said, why indeed? Why can't you be elves or dwarves or small furry-footed people or whatever? So we put all those in. And I typed them all up. And I said, what good is a bunch of rules without some pictures? I knew an artist, one artist at the time. His name was Rob Carver. He was going to college at Arizona State University, which was my old alma mater. And we went over to his house, his dorm room one afternoon, and said, Rob, we're not leaving till you draw us some pictures.
He was held prisoner until he gave you some monsters.
And he did. And one of the original pictures that he drew very quickly into this is the Tunnels and Trolls t-shirt that you see with the the troll or the
sort of
monster
iconic
with
image.
The iconic image. We should have one around here somewhere. With the arrow through its head.
Yes, yes.
Okay. The arrow through its head, and the monster is saying, that one. See, Rob Carver drew this for me back in 1975, and Rick got a hold of it and made it into bumper stickers and T-shirts and so on. And the monster says, yeah, you missed all my vital spots, with the arrow right through his head. And this happened because I was running an adventure for him one night, and he was playing an archer. Okay, and I jumped him with a cave lion, and he shot the cave lion at point blank range with his bow and arrow, and he didn't do enough damage to kill it. He hit it right in the head, but it wasn't enough to kill it, so the cave lion jumped on him and mauled him, and he was complaining. But I shot him at point blank range with my bow and arrow. And I said, well, you missed all his vital spots. And the next day...
And thus the legend was born.
The picture was drawn, okay?
So in terms of the publication of the game, we've sort of seen the early life of the game and being transferred by photocopy from people to people. How does the actual publication of the game, and talk maybe a little bit about that process?
Well, I decided that this photocopy stuff was too cheap, so I told my friends, I'll get copies for everybody. Made a nicer edition with art and a front cover, and put the copyright notice in. Kept a couple of copies for myself to send off to the Library of Congress with the form.
Right.
Because I had noticed that the first edition of Dungeons and Dragons didn't do that. So I did that, and I took it to the Arizona State University print shop, and I had them make 100 copies for me. I was unemployed at the time, trying to get a library job, and it cost me $60 to make. It was a lot of money for me at the time.
Big chunk of money, yeah.
So I took it over. I had them print up 100 copies for me. Give me $1, and I will give you a copy of all the rules, nice and neat.
Right.
I managed to sell about 40 copies of it that way to people that I knew.
Almost made your money back then.
And then I met Rick at a game convention in Tucson. And I showed him this game that I had made. I hadn't seen him since, the last April when I was at his house for the game session where I first saw the D&D rules. He was telling me about how he sold games at conventions and signed people up for Star Web and everything. And I said, well, I have some extra copies of this. Would you take this to a game convention and try to sell them for me? We'll split the profits. I've been selling them for $1, but I think you should sell them for like $3. So Rick took it on. He took my extra 60 copies of first edition of Tunnels and Trolls off to the next game convention he went to, and he was selling them for $3. He was sitting over here at one table, selling Tunnels and Trolls, and Gary was sitting at another table selling Dungeons and Dragons for $10. Right? Gary was selling D&D for $10, and Rick was selling Tunnels and Trolls for $3.
Right.
So Rick sold more.
Go figure, yeah.
Nobody knew what either one was at the time. And mine only cost a third as much as his did.
Right.
And it had a really nice front cover. So Rick sold out, and Rick's going, hey, this could make some money. He's not done, right?
Sure. So then things ramped up from there, I would assume.
Things ramped up from there. The funniest part of the story is that a fan went over to Gary's table and asked him what he was selling. Right? And Gary started explaining Dungeons and Dragons to him and what it was all about. And the fan had been to Flying Buffalo's table earlier and gotten the Tunnels and Trolls. And he says, oh, you mean like Tunnels and Trolls? Right?
I bet his reaction was interesting, to say the least.
Gary was sort of unhappy about this, as Rick told me. And we were never friends.
Well, there's room in the marketplace for both. I think time has borne that out. That there's obviously a plethora of role-playing games that have been spawned by the originals.
So that was the first edition. Once we sold out of that, we'd already had a few more ideas. We'd met Liz Danforth. She did up a nice dungeon delving front cover for us. The original Tunnels and Trolls had a chunky unicorn, sort of looking at a girl, you know, taking skinny dipping. Right. That was our first edition cover. It was the nicest fantasy cover I had. Right?
Sure.
So then Liz did one up of a bunch of dungeon delvers, you know, threatening a sea serpent with a dagger. And that was our second edition cover. We hadn't gotten a troll on the cover yet.
Right.
And we didn't manage it until the 5th edition. But every time I got some ideas, people said, you need this. You need missile rules. Okay.
They incorporated those.
Let's do a way to put missiles into it, right? We've got some new spells. Okay, let's put the spells in.
Well, it sounds like it's evolved over time.
It did evolve.
Been really a collaboration maybe between the people who love the game and you as the original designer and author of the game. There was a good sort of communication system there that you reacted to those requests.
I would say that is exactly true, and one of my big mottos is taken from the Beatles. I get by with a lot of help from my friends.
That is a great motto to live by. Well, in terms of Tunnels and Trolls availability today and its status as a game in print, I know I'm looking at copies sitting right here at Flying Buffalo. What's your level of involvement or development with the game at this point? Rick, can you hand me one of my new solos there?
This is the game as it currently exists. This is the 7.5 edition. We printed the 7th edition in 2005 from a company called Fiery Dragon in Canada, who came to us with a proposal to do a new edition, a 30-year anniversary edition.
Nice.
And what they were proposing to do was a little bitty miniatures game, basically, with some counters.
Okay.
And I talked to their leader, and I said, that's not what I want to do with a new edition of Tunnels and Trolls.
Yeah.
We've come up with a few new ideas that I'd like to get out there and express the rules and give people a complete game. So he says, okay, you do it in time for us to meet our publication schedule, Ken, and we'll print it.
Excellent.
Can't get a better offer than that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I worked like crazy for like 2.5, 3 months doing a new version of Tunnels and Trolls, which is the 7th edition, and gave it to them in time, and they printed up the 7th edition along with the 30-year anniversary edition all at the same time in 2005.
Great.
And it was there for Origins in 2005. Then, 3 years later, they had managed to sell out of their 5,000 copy print run, and they were going to reprint it. And a couple of ideas had occurred to me from playtesting since then. Ideas are always occurring to me.
That's good.
As I said, I've got a few revisions I would like to make. And the D&D 3.5 edition was a big joke at the time. We'd already done a 5.5 edition of Tunnels and Trolls. I said, let's do a 7.5 edition. And that's this one. This is actually the third in a series of pictures based on the 5th edition picture that Liz Danforth did.
Oh, okay.
First we did, the 5th edition is the picture in the middle. It came earliest and it's the second picture.
Okay.
The 7th edition shows the trolls totally kicking those Dungeon Delvers' ass. And that was the latest picture in the series.
Okay.
And this is the prequel picture. Although it's the latest edition, it has the earliest picture of the Delvers coming down into the dungeon and meeting the monsters.
What awaits them.
All right. I've been doing the last couple of years new solo adventures and new Game Master adventures, and putting them out on Drive-Thru RPG.
Great.
And also getting printed copies to sell through Flying Buffalo. This is one of the big ones. It's called the Do Drop In, pun intended.
Nice.
Right? And you can see he's dropping in,
Sure.
to the second level or deeper in the dungeon. And what's down there to meet him? Something that swims with eyes, and it's probably alligators or whatever. This is one of the guests at the hotel where the dungeon guy's exploring. He calls room service and says, send another adventurer up.
Well, it sounds like you've kept active with this game since its inception, and it's still continuing to evolve to this very day in terms of
In fact,
the rule set and new adventures.
We're working on a Tunnels and Trolls Deluxe edition for release next summer.
Great.
There will be a few rule changes. I've been playtesting them here at the convention at GenCon during my TNT games in the mornings. And they're working very well. And we hope to have that out next summer.
Well, if people want to find out more information about Tunnels and Trolls, I know we can go to Flying Buffalo and find copies of the game, but if they want to keep track of your work and what you're doing, is there someplace online that they can find you or more information about what you're doing with the game?
What a great question. There is in fact such a place, and it is called trollhalla.com.
Excellent.
People can join the International Tunnels and Trolls fan club there. It's free.
Great.
You'll find out all that's going on. You'll see things that haven't been published yet in any of the actual Tunnels and Trolls products. You'll have a chance to interact with some of our fans, like Grant over here.
Excellent.
Who is a member of Trollhalla. You'll get my email. You can contact me directly anytime you feel like it. There's always contests and things going on. And the latest Tunnels and Trolls developments are
that's the place to go.
Shown there first.
Well, thank you so much for taking time out today. It was a happy coincidence that you happened to be here while we were walking by, and it's a pleasure to meet you. And thanks so much for giving us kind of the backstory behind one of the first role-playing games to ever exist.
Thank you for talking to me, Stephen. I appreciated the chance to tell the world my story.
Great.